Hey folks, welcome back. This is Joel, and looks like we have reached the end of the series. This is probably going to be one of the last video in the whole Firepower series at least. Yeah, so this is going to be more like an overview of all the other various policies, right, which one can configure using Firepower, right? So there's already one video which I have made on a very basic setup of access policies, but I thought let me just close the loop by talking about all the other important policies involving secure, SI, you've got malware policies, you've got file policies, and so on, right? So we'll talk a little bit about that, and I'll show you probably a couple of examples to do it as well. Right, before we get to it, though I had promised I'm not going to touch whiteboard in this one, let me just at least write down the order in which the policies are processed, right? Now again, if you look at the flowchart which is there on the Cisco's official config guide, it's there are like a lot of steps, right, or a lot of blocks, right, showing how the Firepower processes the packets. But I'm going to stick to some of the most important stuff here, right? So the first one is your pre-filter policy, right? After the pre-filter policy, I would say, or let's start with the top, right? This is where the traffic flow comes inside. So this is the traffic flow, right? And that's how it is entering the firewall. And the first policy which is going to encounter is the pre-filter, right? The next one is your SI, security intelligence, and we'll talk about this as well. So we've got your security intelligence, and then I would say is your SSL policy, right? Your whole SSL decryption part of it, right? Then comes your access policies, and this is what we already talked about in the previous video, in the earlier one, right? This is literally the major meat of it, or firewall, because you know all your layer 3 to layer 7 processing happens here, right? So these are the policies, literally your ACLs, but up until the layer 7 application layer, right? So these are those policies. Then from here you have option to either, you have option to venture towards your malware and file policy, right? So malware plus file, right? Or you can also, let me put a tab here, probably that will be useful. So you can go to that, plus you can also go to your IPS policies or the intrusion policies, right? So this is everything literally you can do using Firepower. And like I said, you know, the flowchart is not as simple as this, right? It's not so there are a lot of things like fast path and all of that. So if you look at the actual flowchart on the config guide, you'll probably get a little more insight around it. But I just want to touch upon some of the most common things, and probably it's better for you guys to kind of keep this particular, at least these policies in mind, because these are something which people who operate Firepower, right, use on a day-to-day basis, right? So these in this particular fashion. That being said, let's start with some basic stuff, right? Right now what I've done is, I think I don't have any policy. I think I've removed all the existing policies because I wanted to do it from scratch, right? So let's go down there. So right now let's go to policies, right? This is my access policy, right? The only policy which is on the device. So if I click on this guy, you would see there is not, like, literally no rules right now configured. I mean, there were rules, I have kind of like gone and disabled them. So as a result, currently there are no rules, which is cool. So what we'll do is we'll create a very simple policy to start with. Like for example, let me start by doing this. So on my, let me clear the screen here. So let's do a ping to, I don't know, maybe 4.2.2, right? One of the most common IP people use to test. So looks like the ping is working, right? Which is good. So I'm gonna just exit out of that, and let's first start by creating a simple access policy to prevent people from connecting to 4.2.2, right? So let's do that. So let's go and create a rule here, right? So we could probably put it above maybe rule 1, I guess, right? So we can put it like first, because anyway all the rules are disabled, so it doesn't really matter, the order doesn't matter. But anyway, so let's say no ping to 4.2.2.2. yeah, there you go. So that's the rule name, right? And obviously this is going to be blocked, right? And what else? So let's select the zones. So zones, when I say I will have to put the inside zone here because I want to block it from my whatever PC I'm using here, right, to connect to the internet. So that one, that's going to be the inside. And the outside, where is your outside? So the outside zone is over here. So let's grab that guy. There you go. That's done. And once we're done with that, let's select the networks, right? So in the networks, let's select obviously your right now I think I don't have any object created, so let's create an object, I guess, right? So network object, and what's the host? So let's say this is the 4.2.2.2 host, right? Let's put the same thing here as well. There you go. I don't know if this is acceptable, but let's see. So let's save that. Okay, that went. That's good. So I'm going to grab that one and put it to the destination over there, right? So that's good. And then let's go down to the ports. So what we want to prevent, we want to prevent ping. Now ping I think is not present here by default, which means we'll have to create another object here. And when I say ping, it's mainly what I want to block ICMP request, right? So let's say ICMP request, and is it going to be TCP? No, it's going to be ICMP. And here type I'll have to change to, I think, type 8. Yeah, there you go, ICMP request, and that's good. So let's save that, and let's grab that guy, ICMP request. Let's send it to the destination, right? Looks good. So, and then if you want, we can also go to logging, right? Enable logging at the start of the session, and we are good to add this. So let's try this one first, right? So this is like very basic, which we probably have done already, but I just want to, so let's save that. And you'll see some errors probably throwing up when we deploy this policy. It's probably because of some of my licenses, right? That should be fine because the access policy should work fine, right? So let's wait for this to happen. Let's grab this one. Let's deploy. There you go. I'm going to pause the video and come back once it is completely deployed, right? Okay, so this is what I was telling, right? These are warnings. These are all coming from my earlier videos on VPN because some of the licenses are probably some of the things are depreciated and so on, but that's fine. It's not going to create problem for us. It's anyway warnings. All right, so I think that should trigger the deployment. There you go. I'm going to pause and come back once that is done. All right, looks like that is completed. So it's time to go and kind of test this out. So now the ping to 4.2.2 should not work, right? So there you go. It's timing out, right? So that's exactly what our policy was supposed to do, right? And that's working fine. And simultaneously, the rest of the ping should work, which is say something like to cisco.com, right? There you go, right? So that is working. So you see, our policy actually kind of did the trick, right? We were successful in blocking 4.2.2, but at the same time, the rest of the IPs are pingable. All right, so let's do the next one. So for the next one, give me a second. All right, for the next one, let's try some URL filtering, right? So I've opened up a couple of sports websites, right? You've got Yahoo Sports here, and I also have I think ESPN here, right? ESPN.com, where it's a pretty famous sports website as well, right? So I've got these both guys, and what I intend to do is, using my Firepower, I intend to block the traffic based on URL, right? Specifically the sports URLs, right? Sports category URLs. So let's try to do that. So let's go down back to our policies, access policy, and let's just go here. Right, so yeah, so we'll have to create a new rule this time, right? So let's double click on this guy. On a device, you can just use one access control policy, so we'll have to create whatever we want inside as a rule, right? So let's add a rule, and let's add it below 1 probably, right? So what are we going to add? We're going to say no sports, right? Because we want to block it based on URLs, right? Let's not just block, but probably block and reset as well, right? So that's one option. So you have a lot of options here. Allow, trust, monitor. Allow basically means that obviously it's straightforward, right? That when that particular condition meets, you're basically permitting the traffic. But then you might be confused. What is the second option? Trust and allow appears to be same, but the difference is that in trust you are basically bypassing any further checks, right? Any of your malware policies and IPS and all of that also gets bypassed. Whereas in allow, what you're telling is, okay, as per this L3 L7 ACLs permitted, but then the rest of the policies, if there are there, then those or rest of the checks need still to be completed. Maybe IPS checks, maybe malware or file policy checks, so those will still run, right? So block with reset is what we're going to use here, which means the TCP connection is going to be reset after that, right? So the zones, again the same thing, inside zone, this is outside, right? Inside to outside, that's good. We can go to networks, right? So networks, we can select the IP. Do we have our IP here? I think it's the general network, right? If I'm not wrong, yeah. So let's add it to the source. So that's our general network, which is the network in which my PC is residing. And yeah, let's keep the destination anyway. And URLs, now this is the important part, right? In the URLs, let's search for, so you see various categories here, but I'm going to go and search for sports. There should be some sports here. Yeah, there you go, right? Sports and recreation. Is there anything else? Let's search once again. So sports, right? So yeah, there you go. So we've got sports here, right? And you'll have to add it to the rule. So there you go, sports and recreation, right? Has been added, and the rule is enabled. Do we want anything else? Probably if you want, we can also click on the logging and turn on the logging as well. So when it gets blocked, it gets logged. So I'm gonna add this as the rule, right? So then we are gonna save it. Right? And let's go and deploy this. Right? So what we are doing in the second use case, we are testing out URL filtering, right? Which is kind of like layer 7 filtering, right? So yeah, that's good. So we will it's FTDHA1, that's good. So we're going to click on that and that. And let's deploy, right? So we'll come back once this deployment is done, right? And that's completed. So time to check this out. So what we're going to do is, let's just instead of reloading here, let me just open this in a new tab. So let's copy this one. So go to a new tab, let's paste it here, and let's try this. There you go, right? You see the reset error? That's exactly what we intended. So that's how you can kind of prevent, or you can kind of block URLs, right? So that's your URL filtering. Awesome. Cool. So the next thing what we are going to try, so what have we done till now? Where's that thing? So the pre-filter policy is something which we did not try, probably we will not either, but let me show you where you do that. It's not something which you use very regularly, right? So probably not something which you will configure on a day-to-day basis. But like I said, pre-filter policy is something where what you can do is, if you know for sure, that a certain kind of policy, certain kind of traffic, right, you want to block it even before it goes through the firewall, right? Even before it before all of these access control policies are kicked in, right? So in that case, what you can do is you can create, by default you have something like a default policy, but you can create the pre-filter over here, right? So yeah, there you go, the last option, right? So you can create the pre-filter policy under the policies. But then yeah, so it's again pretty much similar to how you create policies here. It's just that you need to be absolutely sure that it could work out in either way, right? You can either use pre-filter policy to block certain traffic so that it gets dropped right at the start and it doesn't get processed at all, and you're saving the power of your firepower to do something else. Or you can also permit it so that it bypasses all the checks, right? So none of these policies are going to be checked, and directly the traffic is bypassed through all these checks, right? Fast pathed, right? That's what they call it. Anyway, so what we did till now is we checked out this, right? And in access policies we checked out we basically I showed you how to block. In the previous video also I've showed you how to block IPs, how to block protocols, how to block ports, In this one also we kind of did a review of that. Now let's go and quickly check this malware and file policy, right? How do you do that? So for that, let me just close these windows, I guess, right? So for malware and this thing, so you'll have to again go down to your policies here, right? So yeah, looks like my browser isn't coping well. Yeah, there you go. So this is your pre-filtered policy, which I was talking earlier. But now let's go to the malware and file, right? So this literally uses your AMP, right? The AMP technology is basically used in the background. Anyway, so let's, there's nothing right now. So let's create a separate new policy, right? So you can create your malware and file, but then you'll have to come and attach it to your access policy. That's the whole idea. So I'm going to say, I don't know, maybe something simple, mend, or let's just say malware underscore file, right? So malware underscore file, that's the name of the policy. Let's save that. And let's add a rule inside this guy, right? So there is nothing right now, so we'll have to add a rule. And when you're adding a rule, you will have to select the protocol. We're gonna, select all the protocols. You can also select upload or download. I'm gonna do it bidirectional, right? And what do I want to block? Let's say I want to block PDF files, right? So I don't want people to download or upload PDF files, and also I want my FTD to look for any malware in these files, right? So yeah, all types selected. We'll have to add it here. There you go. It got added, and I think we are good. We can go and save that, right? So let's save that one. All right. So before deploying this policy, I have just opened up one more browser tab here just to show you that right now, without the policy present on the Firepower, I'm able to download a PDF, right? There you go. So I'm able to, I think that's download. Yeah, there you go. So I'm able to download this PDF. I can save it and it gets downloaded, right? There you go. So that works. But then once we configured this, right, that shouldn't work. So what we'll do next is, so once we have configured once you have created the policy, let's go to our access control, right? So here, let's go down here, and here we have to basically attach this particular malware or file policy to one of our rules, right? So the problem here is, if you look at my two policies which are right now active, both of them have a block over here, right? You can see here, right? Let me just pull this to the left a bit. Yeah, so both of them have a block. Now the problem is, because of this block, right, my if you see my flow here, because of the block, right, if it is getting blocked here, the rest of the stuff doesn't even get checked, right? So as a result, my malware or file or the IPS, none of that get checked. So what I have to do is I have to probably create a new rule, right, with an allow, and then attach this two policies to it. So what I'm going to do is create a new rule, probably put it below, above or below rule number 2, right? And let's allow this. It's very important for you to allow this, because if you don't allow, then, like I said, the file policies will not even get triggered, right? So all right, so yeah, so this is going to be the policy, and here the zones, it's fine, not much needed. I mean, it will still work. Let's select the network though. So the source network, obviously it's going to come from my general net, right? That's my network of where my PC is residing right now. And the most important part is this inspection, right? So in the inspection, you see there is an option here, file policy. So that's where you go and select it, right? If you want, you can also log it. There you go. So I can say log at the beginning of the session, and I think we can add this one. Probably it's better to change this to looking for PDF or something, right? It's not very, so let's say looking for PDF, right? That's a better name. So let's save that, right? So there you go. So what we are trying to do is, or if you want more granularity, we can also probably put the zones, right, which is going from inside, right, to outside. You can do the same thing, right? So the networks are good, and we have selected the inspection policy over here, which is fine. Yeah, that looks good. Cool. So now let's do the same thing like we have done. We are going to save this one, and we will have to deploy it. Give it a second. Yeah. the saving is completed, looks like, and I'm good to go and deploy this. So look at the yellow mark here, right? So you get that yellow mark or the yellow icon over there only when you have some kind of a I'll probably show it to you again. Deploy. Okay, so you'll get that yellow icon over there only if you have a file policy attached for a particular rule, right? So that is pretty interesting as well. So that's going to start deploying. Meanwhile, let's probably try to show it to you again how that looks, because that's important. Okay, so wait, so let's go down there. Let's dismiss that. Yeah, here, right? So you see this yellow icon, that's for file policy. And this one is the first one is for intrusion policy. Right now we don't have a IPS rule, right? So that's why it is white in color, but the file policy is yellow in color. Sweet. So let's see if the deployment is completed. No, it's still happening. So give me some time. Let me pause it and come back once it is done. All right, guys. I think I made one small mistake while doing this. So let me just correct that right away, right? So the action, I did not select block files here, right? So that was a small mistake. Let me just try to redo this, right? So that's good. I think it's added. Cool. So yeah, I was just testing it and I was very curious why the PDF files were going in. So let me just fix that. So you have to select the correct action, right, which I kind of missed. I'm going to save this and yeah, save that again. I don't have to attach it again because it's already attached. I need to just go and deploy this, right? So let's deploy this and come back once it is done. All right, so looks like that has gone in. Now let me try to download the same PDF again. Since now we have blocked PDFs. But what I'm going to do is I'll do it on a different browser, because if I do it on the same browser, the PDF would have been cached and you will probably see it again. So let's go down to, say, this guy. Let's put it here. Right, there you go, right? So it gets blocked. You will not be able to download the PDF, right? So that's mainly about malware and file policies, right? So you can create any such kind of malware policies and you will have to attach it back to your access policy and make sure you select the right action based on what you need. Okay. The next thing is probably maybe we'll just spend just a minute or so on SSL decryption. I'm not gonna actually configure this because it would need me to get some to have a PKI in place, right, to have a CS server, and I don't think right now, yeah, I've turned off my CS server. So but I'll just quickly give you an understanding. So let's actually come back to speak about the same policy which we just now did, right? So remember, I was trying to block people from downloading PDF files, right? That's what we just now completed. But now the same policy, do you think it will work in a HTTPS environment, right? Right now whatever we were trying was HTTP. So in a HTTPS, I don't know, one of these files, is it HTTPS? Let's try that. Yeah, so see, this is HTTPS. Is that right? Did I get it right? Probably. Or maybe we could try some other, maybe this one is another PDF, I guess. Now see, this is a HTTPS website, and you can see that I'm able to download a PDF, though I have a PDF block policy in place, right? So you see, with the people using HTTPS, the Firepower will not be able to do anything because all the traffic is getting encrypted, all the data is getting encrypted, right? So in such a scenario, how would you kind of block traffic, right? So that's where this SSL policy comes into play, right? And this is where you create it. Where do you create it? Let's go here to access. Yeah, there you go. So this is the SSL policy. So SSL decryption policy, right? Mainly what it allows you to do is, if from inside the firewall you are reaching outside, right, then it will act as a proxy in between, right? So it will terminate the SSL connections to itself and then create a fresh connection from itself to the outside world. So if you see the diagram here, so from the jump host, what it will do is it will the SSL connection which I'm establishing, right, to some internet website, right, outside. So it will terminate that on the Firepower, right? The Firepower will terminate that in SSL connection, and then it will create a fresh another session towards the internet or towards that website, right? So that brief minute, right, for that brief instant on the Firepower, the traffic is unencrypted, and as a result, the Firepower will be able to, you know, probably do some blocking and do some control on top of it, right? Now the thing is, again, there are two options here. One is, you know, I think they call it as resign, right? Resigning is when the traffic is basically going out from inside to outside, so it will recreate those sessions, right? It will resign that session, so that's why it's called resign. And then there is, I think, one more thing called as known certificates or known connections. So when you have someone from the internet who is initiating a connection maybe towards one of your server, right, maybe here, so in that case also what you can do is you will have to take the private key from that particular server and you'll have to put it on this particular Firepower, right? So that SSL session is first established with the Firepower, and then the Firepower will create one more sessions towards the you know, towards that internal server or whatever it is, right? So there are two options of that sort, right, when you're going from inside to outside or from outside to inside. But you understand the point, right, why you need this, because without this what happens is all the traffic gets encrypted, right, up to layer 7. So all your Firepower policies will be ineffective, right, because Firepower will not be able to see if the traffic is actually a PDF file, you know, it will not be able to see anything in the payload. Everything will be encrypted because it is SSL, right? So that is very important. Now I'll just show you where to do it. I'm not going to create one because, like I said, you know, you need really your CA and all of that to be in place for this. But this is where you do it. So you create a SSL policy over here. You know, you can you can give the options: do not decrypt, block, you know, or block with reset. You know, different options this way. I'm just gonna say do not decrypt for now, just because it's an example, right? I'm gonna say SSL, right? Save that. I just want to show you the GUI, right? So here, this is where it gets created, and here you have options for, you know, adding the rules, right? There you go. So this is where you get, and this is what I was telling, right? You have to kind of like trust the certificates, because at the end of the day, you're the Firepower and you're terminating these SSL sessions, right, coming from, you know, from the user. So you're on at the same time on the clients, you will need to trust the Firepower certificate, right? So that's very important as well. So yeah, so the certificate, setting out of the certificate is one of the most important thing when you talk about the SSL policy, right? Now that's just not enough. Once you create this, then you'll obviously have to let me show you where you do that. So you go to the access control policy, and whichever access control policy is active on your device, go to that, and on the top over here, right, yeah, over here you can select the corresponding SSL policy which you created just now. There you go, right? That's how you do it, right? I just wanted to give you a GUI kind of an example here, and not right actually configuring, because this would need you to, like I said, you know, to have all your CA and all of that in place. Sweet. Okay, let's do one more now. Probably actually what is remaining, so we have done this, we have done this, we have talked about SSL as well. Pre-filter also we talked about. Okay, the two things which are remaining is IPS and security intelligence. Let's do IPS first. So in IPS, again, very similar to the other policies, you know, you can go down to intrusion policy here on the top, right? Leave page, that's fine. I'm not going to save it. That's okay. So we're talking a little bit about IPS, right? Intrusion prevention. So this mainly works in the background. It's nothing but the snort engine, right? So Firepower is one of the most important USP, or the one of the coolest feature is that it uses this snort rules, and there are thousands and thousands of these snort rules, right? So I can probably create a policy here, right? Let's create a new policy. I'm going to call this as our IPS policy, right? And so here you have many options. Either you can choose between security or connectivity, right? So if for your network, if you feel connectivity is more important than security, then you can go for this, or security over connectivity. Cisco recommends you to use this though, balanced security and connectivity. So the rules and the snort rules which are present here, right, they have been designed in such a way that, you know, it provides you both, right? There won't be many false positives in this one. So you create the policy and edit the policy here. Now, like I said, this is the baseline. So Cisco already has put together a bunch of snort rules which gives you this good balance between security and connectivity. But if you are not happy with that, right, or if you want to tinker, if you want to add your own stuff, then you can do that as well. So that is basically what you do in the next page, which loads up, right? So let's give it a second. See, it's loading the base policy, which means it is loading the basic set of rules which are part of that balanced security and connectivity, right? So this is how it looks, right? So this is what we have selected. This is the base policy, and this policy has looks like it has around 12,000 odd rules, 12,000 enabled rules, right? Out of those 12,000 rules, 500 rules will just generate events, right? Whereas the rest of the 11,600 odd rules can do both, like drop packets as well as generate events, right? So that's the thing. But like I said, you can use these pencil marks to kind of go and disable some of the rules if you don't like them. Maybe after enabling this, you realize that in your enterprise that you're getting a lot of false positives, or maybe you're getting a lot of tag cases, the IT cases, where people are calling up the IT folks day and night and telling, look, I'm not able to access this legitimate website, right? So in that case, you can probably go and disable some of these, by checking out these check boxes, right? I mean, these pencil boxes. Now let's commit this, right? Say discard that. So this is how we are creating our first IPS policy. But like every other policy, right, just creating is not sufficient. We will, just like other policies which we checked, right, just like our SSL or file and malware policy, right, this one, just creating it is not sufficient. You will have to go back and attach it to one of your access policies. So let's go and do that. Let me show you where you do that. So there you go, it's loading. Awesome. So there you go. Did it load? Probably not. Let me try that again. Okay. All right. So here now you have two options, right? If you want that particular policy which you just now created, right, the IPS policy to be like a default action, then you can go to this default setting, and there you go. See, you can see our IPS over here. You can select it here. That way, if a traffic is not matching any of these things on the top, it will directly go for that guy. Or you can go to, like, for example, remember we have this PDF policy. You can just go to that guy. You can go to the inspection section, and here you have a drop down which is for intrusion policy. So I can click the drop down, and here I can go and select the one which we just now created, right? So I can save it this way, and obviously save and then deploy, right? So that's about the intrusion policy, right? So probably will not be able to actually verify that, because you would really need a malicious website to check that out. But yeah, let me anyway deploy it, and meanwhile let's talk about the next topic which we will discuss, or probably the last topic, which is going to be the security intelligence, right? So let's just deploy this meanwhile. Yeah, so let's deploy that, and meanwhile let's talk about the security intelligence. All right, so I'm not sure if you have seen this before, but let's go back to our policies. And yeah, so we are on our access policies. Let's click on that guy, and you might have seen a tab for security intelligence right over here, right? If you are investigating this on your own, you probably would have seen this as well. So let's go to that guy and let's see what that is. So security intelligence is nothing but it's actually think of it as a IP blacklist, right? Think of it as a big dump of IPs which have been blacklisted by a intelligence security group, right, which Cisco has. I think you have heard of Talos, right? Talos Intelligence. So these guys, these are nothing but a bunch of very highly skilled security researchers, and day in and day out they figure out which are the most harmful IPs, and maybe some command and control servers and all of that, right? And they try to categorize them, right? Categorize the threats, and they try to blacklist them. And our Firepower basically downloads that particular list and provides that intelligence. And if you enable this, you're basically safeguarding your network against those harmful IPs, right? So that is the whole idea about this. And how do you do it? You can basically go and select everything. Like, see, you have right from Tor, you have spyware, you have some kind of attackers and bunch of things, right? So forget about these green things. This green are basically the objects which we created, right? But other than that, we can probably select everything like this. I don't know, can we? Probably let's select that guy, and let's see if I can select everything though. Maybe, okay. It's because I'm on a VN's RDP, I'm not sure. I think that should work probably. Maybe not. Let me figure that. Give me a second. Right. So there you go. I'm selecting all the all the blacklisted IPs. I'm gonna say add to blacklist. Right. So that way, you can, you can obviously select the ones which, if it is creating again a lot of false positives, you can probably select the ones which you really want. But in my case, I'm probably selecting all of these guys, right? So you can do that, and obviously better to enable logging as well by clicking on this, right? Looks like logging is enabled by default, so that's good. What else? You can also whitelist certain IPs if you want, right? You can do that. Right now I've selected any zone, so that is good as well. And once you do that, obviously you can go and save it, right? It's nothing very complicated. So that's pretty cool. Now let me deploy this, and let me also show you some cool stuff on the FMC on where you can see this, right? So let's save that. Give me a second. It's deploying. Right, so let's deploy this guy over here. Meanwhile, let me show you on, do I have to, yeah, okay, press this once again. Okay, so that's good. So let's meanwhile go to the Talos website, right? So this is the Cisco's Talos intelligence website, and you can, it's pretty cool. You have a lot of cool things to read about here, but stuff which is very important for us is the reputation center, right? And the reputation center, under that, if you go, you have something called intelligence categories, right? And if you see here, basically you've got the threat categories as well, right? I think I probably forgot to show you the URL part, so maybe let me just show you that as well. Okay, let's probably go back to this one. Let's open this in a new tab. So I might have forgotten to show you the URL blacklist as well. Just like IP blacklist, you have a URL blacklist as well. So you can click on the pencil mark, right? Go to security intelligence again. So this was what we looked at, the network part. We can also go to URLs, right? And here also you have the same list, the URLs, right, which needs to be blocked, right? So you can select all these guys, right up till here, and you can probably go and blacklist them. So let me just select them. In a second. All right, so there you go, right? I selected all the URLs also, and I added them as well to the blacklist list over here, right? So now I can basically go and save this one and probably deploy this again. I should have showed you this earlier, but okay, anyway, this deployment has completed, so I can close this. And yeah, so that got saved. So let's go and deploy this one. Some of the well-known attacks, right? People would be doing it from a particular IP or a URL, right? All of that would be part of that list. So it's always good to enable that to make sure that you are, and because Talos kind of updates it regularly, so that you are always updated with the latest attacks, right? So there you go. It's getting deployed. Meanwhile, let's come here. So this is nothing but the categories which you saw over there on FMC as well, right? Malware, spyware, right? You saw these names, right? These are literally the same things which you saw there, right? So that's important thing. The other thing is, while we are here, probably we can also check this out. We can anytime go to IP reputation center, right? And you can put in a, I don't know, maybe IP address or a URL, and it will tell you the health of that particular URL. So let's say cisco.com, right? So it will tell us what is the health of this, and we know Cisco.com is a legitimate website, right? So it is probably going to tell you that it is all good about this, right? See, there you go, it's saying it's trusted, right? Which means it seems like a good website. But let me show you other cool thing now. So if I jump onto my FMC, right? So let's do that. Let's jump into my, right? So we are on my FMC now. Let's get into the expert console. And inside your expert console, right, so there is a place where you can check all these harmful IPs, right? The blacklist mainly. How do you check the blacklist? You can go to this particular folder. It's variable sf IP ref download source fire feed. Yeah, there you go. Right. See, this is literally the same blacklisted IPs which we saw over there, right? So when I can take one of this IP, right, and let's try to dump it here and see the health of that particular IP. Right, let's try that. Okay, maybe it did not get copied. Let's try that again. So copied. Okay, let's try that. And there you go, right? It's very poor. You can see that, and it seems like a malware, right? That's exactly what I wanted to show you here, right? So that's mainly it, guys. So this is literally pretty cool. We've got like a reputation center, and Talos regularly updates this particular list, both the URL blacklist and the IP blacklist. And you know, by enabling the security intelligence, you're basically directly feeding into, right, this Talos engine, right? And that way you can also see it using this particular command, right? You can see those IPs on your FMC as well, the latest downloaded IPs. And using this cool feature, you can enable this inside your FMC so that no one inside your organization will be able to, you know, connect to any of these harmful IPs, right? Cool. That's I think that's mainly what I wanted to talk in this particular video, right? Hope we have covered everything, right? We talked about you know, so all the very important stuff like pre-filter, security intelligence. We talked about SSL policy, access policies. We talked about malware and file and IPS as well, right? So I think that concludes the whole series of this you know, Firepower, right? Hope you found it useful, and yeah, so I'll be putting all these videos on YouTube, right, in that particular playlist, right? You can go and check it out and drop in your comments, right? So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Have a good day. Bye.